Okay, we're gonna get the meeting underway. Thank you everybody for showing up tonight. Virginia, will you lead us in opening prayer? I see you right there.
Father God, we thank you for this day. Father God, we ask you to acknowledge better ways to power. Yeah.
Thank you. So to start, we just want to review our etiquette policy. Really, what's going to be guiding us is what we're doing here is the spirit is being thoughtful of others, right? And being thoughtful of our nation. And a part of that includes all tribal members and regardless of past transgressions. So in our discussions, just remind and ask everybody to be thoughtful and keep it in mind that we are here in hopes of progression, right? So to as you're sharing, kind of keep that spirit with you. The goal of tonight's meeting is to if you haven't think everybody was at the meeting on Saturday, but I'll reiterate what was said is that what the committee has found right now is that we need another survey to make sure we have an accurate pulse. We believe we have an accurate pulse, but we just want to reconfirm that the direction that we're headed right now is still in line with what the people want. So the goal of tonight's meeting is to formulate a survey that we want to submit to the people, and we want to have this done by July 4th. So what we do tonight, the committee's going to take and finish it up, polish it, and have it presentable by Indian Council. So with that being said, our main subjects of discussion are rights and responsibilities of the Indian Council, the people, rights and responsibilities of the business committee, and how those two structures look and work with each other. Okay. So with that being said, this is a very loose dialogue. Try not to cut anybody off. Let's listen to each other. Let's think about each other and what type of things we want to know about our nation as we're compiling this. We all have our own individual ideas of what we think is the best approach to everything, but we want to gather as much information as possible. So we want to figure out those places where we don't quite know if I'm in line with everybody else or what I think is I'm kind of out in left field by myself, right? So that's some of the things that we want to come up with tonight is we want to know that deeper pulse of the people. So with that being said, some of the talking points we have tonight. All right. Some of the talking points is how do we educate our tribal members about processes? Okay. We started talking about that in our pre-discussion here. What are some of the things that we can do? Indian Council versus General Council. You know, if you talk about the Indian Council, you talk about General Council, a lot of us know we're talking about the same thing, but would everybody know we're talking about the same thing? And the Indian Council is defined in our governing resolution as what we commonly call General Council, right? So it's interchangeable. Do we want to call it one thing or the other so that we unify our language? With that, the Indian Council roles and the business committee roles, term limits, term lengths, structure. For example, do we have a group of lawmakers? Do we have a good balance of authority set up currently? What would that balance of authority look like? What's the difference between business affairs and tribal affairs? Do we need a distinction there? We have a business committee And currently that business committee handles everything, right? What is the Indian Council authority? What are we allowed to do as the citizens of the nation, right? Can we call our own Indian Council meeting? If so, how? Where does the business committee have authority over the Indian Council in meeting standards or in Robert's Rules of Order? Where we want to be able to identify and point our finger to, this is the place that they're able to do that. Are more meetings of the Indian Council necessary? We heard the business committee discussing that a little bit. There seem to be a few that are heavily in favor of more meetings of the Indian Council. Barbara had mentioned 4, quarterly. So, we want to find out more about that. Are more meetings of the Indian Council necessary? Okay. Is a 2-day Indian Council warranted? Would it be easier for people to, now that we have so much business on tap, is it easier to break that business up in between 2 different days? So are 2 shorter days easier than 1 really long day? Are more business committee meetings necessary? And what do those look like? Some of the things we thought of was a business committee meeting for an informative type. Here's what's going on. Here's all of our directors' reports. I don't know about you guys. I love the directors' reports now because they're just full of information that we didn't get before. There's a participatory type where the business committee meeting is set up to engage the people. What do we want to hear? How do you want to share? Is the whole meeting open forum? Do you want to give us feedback on what we're doing? There's different types of structures that we could have there. We have an executive type where it's still open to us, but they're conducting executive business and we have no say-so in what happens in those types of meetings. And then a special type where special conduct has to take place or a special meeting is called for whatever reason. If we are supporting a full-time role, a full-time responsibility, a full-time wage, that accessibility shouldn't be a problem with them being able to meet on a weekly basis with us or in front of us, right? How does the Indian Council give subcommittees direction? All right, so this is very loose and we kind of do it by the seat of our pants, right? We've seen the outcome of the compensation committee because we didn't give them proper direction and we should have, but who was supposed to know that, right? Who was supposed to stop us and say, is like, all right, it's established. Now, what do you want their directives to be, right? We have no bylaws in our meetings, and those bylaws could have prevented something like that and say, all right, whenever general counsel or the Indian Council establishes a subcommittee, here's how they establish directives for those. We don't have any of those things. The Constitution Committee, we were established by general counsel in 2019, but nothing happened, right? We sat dormant until the new administration took over, and then even after they got settled, they finally said, it's like, hey, we need to get this done. And they appointed. It didn't go back to the Indian Council to say, it's like, who do you want to lead this? They appointed it. Do we want to continue with those types of authorities? Bylaws for the business committee, bylaws for the Indian Council. Do we want voting to return to the Indian Council? What is or voting, when I say voting, I mean elections, returning to Indian Council. What is the role of each member of the business committee? Should secretary treasurer position be split into 2 positions? Does this eliminate the need for an executive secretary? Does an executive secretary need to be in our resolution? Should we have public schedules for our business committee members so that we know when they're available? We know when we have access to, we know what they're doing on a daily basis. Could be too much in some instances, could be, just right in others. Might be not enough. I don't know. But these are, this is a very lengthy list, right? And of course, we're not going to hit all of these tonight. But it's going to get the discussion going as far as like, these are some of the thoughts we're having around what we need to know and what we need to hone in on as we approach this next phase of amendments. The things that we want to know is like, hey, is this important to you? If not, let's move on. Is this important to you? If not, all right, back burner. Okay. So with that being said, we're going to just open the floor for discussion. Try to use the mic, please, for the 3 folks that we have online. And for those of you that are online, somewhere in our conversation, we will interject with your comments, but please just type in your questions or comments about anything in the chat so that we could all read them and get to them when convenient.
So talking about the roles of the VC and the full-time pay, I don't see any reason with the money that we're paying them that they cannot be in those offices 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, whatever it is, Monday through Friday. So I mean, I'm all for, them working because I think we pay them too much money and I know they're busy and I know that, but if they're here, they're more accessible, more approachable, maybe is the better word. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with them. I think they need to be accountable. I think, like I go to, right, I go to work every day and I'm expected to be there to put in my hours and granted, nobody checks on me, but I'm in there and I'm doing my job. I don't see why they can't do the same. With what we're paying them, there's no reason that they can't be here 40 hours a week. And I realize life happens. We all have stuff that happens. But as a general rule, if I didn't work my 40 hours, my paycheck would definitely reflect that I didn't work my 40 hours. I don't necessarily, I just feel like we need some more accountability. Right? Absolutely. They should have to. Well, I don't necessarily think clock in because as a salaried person, I don't have to clock in, but I'm in my computer by the time I'm supposed to be. I'm here. This is my right. I'm here. But you gotta have.
It's like you have them, you say, you have this meeting at 2:00. Why do I have to tell you? But again, we're looking at people who we don't see them all the time here. And I don't even show up out here a lot like I used to. I used to come out here all the time and visit with employees, not to visit, like and be friendly. I'm out here because I care about our people. And these people out here, they take care of our people's benefits. So why wouldn't you want to talk to them? Why wouldn't you want to understand them? Why wouldn't you want to build a relationship with them where they feel comfortable talking to you, speaking to you, especially when they have a problem, whether it's a working problem or whether it's a family problem? They feel confident enough to go and sit there and speak with you for a couple of minutes and say, hey, this is what's going on. We don't even have that with our own business committee half the time. We have that with our tribal employees. That's sad. So our business committee should have some type of accountability for when they show up and when they leave. And if we have to do a show of hands, I will say who I voted for. No issues.
I agree with the responsibility, but at the same time, they're adults. We're all adults. We all know, well, you should know that if you're not going to work and you're not doing your job, then like if I didn't go to work, one, it would be crazy the very next day, but my paycheck would reflect that I wasn't at work. So and I know that they're not necessarily on that kind of a scale, but they need to have that same type of accountability mentality. And I don't necessarily know how we get that or even what that looks like, but I feel like with what we pay them, they should at least be in that office 40 hours a week. Just my thoughts.
One thing that I have kind of thought about too, we do have a human resources department. So there's supposed to be something like rules or regulations as an employee that they are supposed to follow, but they're not being enforced.
Well, those rules do not apply to the business committee.
But with the business committee, then I would have to go back even farther in the sense of even generations ago, they had a group of people and they talked to one another. So now we're into a new part of our life where it's big and there has to be some kind of organization there. But I feel we've kind of lost the person to person
Absolutely.
situation. And well, again, it's just a thought that, you know, we do have human relations for employees, but the business committee, the thought when they was even set up, you know, day by day operations came up. I was tribal administrator at one point, but it's the sort of thing that the business committee really was kind of created. Okay, you people then can follow the day by day operation of what's going on. And so it was established. And so, but even so, with a business committee or many organizations, you have, for instance, you had a level of financial responsibility. If somebody wanted to propose something, they wanted more than $500, they would have to get approval to do that rather than the committee itself making that determination. Because we've been committed to millions of dollars. But did we know about it? But there should be, again, the accountability. And there are ways to follow up on that too.
Employee, like the employees are held accountable to the employee handbook and standards. Do you all believe the business committee should be held to that same standard?
Above us. Yes. Every single day. In the employee handbook,
Is that part of our ethics committee?
Could be, possibly. With this round of amendments that's coming, it's being proposed that an ethics commission be created, and that the duty of the ethics commission be to create a code of ethics for business committee members and appointed appointed employees, I guess. I don't know how to define that. So it possibly could be, but I do want to remind everybody, in the interest of organization and record keeping, use the mic, please.
I was so focused on everything else.
So from what we're hearing right now, and the business committee roles, a question could be posed that should the business committee members be mandated to a full-time position or a full-time role or full-time participation, something along those lines. And that's tough. That's tough. Well, because you're thinking of, or what we'd like to do is think of legacy, right? One, just principally as natives being told how to be governed, right? And now we're doing the same thing for our leaders. It's kind of we're taking the what's been done to us, and we're perpetuating that type of behavior, right, in our own governance. And this is really a time for us to shift into what is really us, right? And one of the hard things about this, and when I say it's hard, is that we have been assimilated and institutionalized into this current way of governance that's what we see as the answer, right? And it's the clear answer. But in the long run, is that the best answer, right? And maybe it's the easy answer in saying that we come back and mandate ourselves to reevaluate ourselves in 4 years, 8 years, or something of the sort, right? But ideally, what we would like to be is, in a perfect world, we elect our business committee members and they know to do the right thing, right? Our problem is we elect our business committee members into these roles and then we immediately don't trust them when they don't do one or two things that we don't agree with, right? And then fire and brimstone, and then they're not a good leader anymore when we don't know everything that's going on, right? So so when I say it's hard, that's what I mean. It's like there's a lot of different things now. We're talking about management.
Right. But if a CEO doesn't work, doesn't produce a product, does he stay employed? No, he doesn't.
Mm.
And they're elected. We all put, whether you voted for the people that are up there or not, the people spoke, and those are the people that are currently representing us.
Right.
So everybody should get behind them and support them. But we voted them in office. When I cast my votes, I expected the same work ethic that I have.
Mm.
And that's what I expect from them. I work a minimum of 40 hours a week. And I know their job's big, and I know that it sometimes I'm sure some of them work more than 40.
Mm.
But I think a bare minimum with the salary that they have, I don't understand why it's so hard, or why it becomes a simulation, or why it becomes forced to expect a good work ethic.
Mm.
We're paying DDA, whoever is paying them good money to help us succeed. And if you're not there every day working on that to help your people succeed.
I don't know that for me, a good work ethic is really defined by the number of hours that you put in, right?
I agree with
I
that.
think that it also isn't dependent on location. And what we do with a mandate of 40 hours being in office is we limit our pool of potential committee members. It's really hard for a lot of people. We want the most educated, and this is something that we discuss quite a bit. This always comes up at about this time, is that when we say that we want the best, we want qualified, we want people with these good work ethics. These are people with careers, right? These are people with families, and they're rooted sometimes in other places. And when we ask them to stop what they're doing, put their career on hold, please come be of service to the tribe. We need you, we need you, we need you. And then they're set back in their career because we need full-time participation here. We need full-time attendance here. We need you to be available all the time to us. It's kind of a catch-22, right? We want the best, but we're not willing to bend, so to speak, in some of these opinions about how we get the best and the things that we're willing to do to negotiate our needs for the best to be of service to us. Can somebody in Wisconsin serve our business committee and do a hell of a job? I believe they can. I don't think that they have to be present 100% of the time. I don't think that they've even got to work 20 hours to serve well in that position, 20 hours a week to serve well in that position. I think that it could be done. So how do we continue to do that though? I mean, is that something that we want to continue to be aware of or invite in as possibilities, right? Professors, engineering field, in my field, if I take 2 years off and don't have the focus, continued education in what I'm doing, if I'm not changing with the software as the software is changing, I'm behind not only those 2 years that I missed, but the time that it takes to catch back up. And then I've got to recreate clientele. And so I'm not out just 2 years. I'm out 3.5 years from my career, right? So how do we set ourselves up to support somebody like that? Should we? Is that something that we even want to do, right? Or are we looking for people to serve who have that availability to commit? Because it's two different approaches to that, because a full-time got to be here type of position doesn't fit one of those.
What we are trying to establish through the committee is getting input from people in the sense of perhaps we need some kind of framework that we can follow, that maybe even be written. Because right now, everybody's just kind of on their own. We don't have anything in place yet. And perhaps that's necessary. So that's what, again, what we're hoping for is input on, again, what we would like to see our elected or hired people doing.
I take that back. Vicky asked if I get paid to come up here. I receive a stipend. Our committee receives a $400 stipend.
That's awesome that you would take time out. And I get your point that if you lose 2 years, you fall behind in your career. I get that. I understand that. But at the same time, look at me and Grace. We can't go back to work. We worked out. We're retired now. So, there's got to look at all different ways. And you can check with the Oklahoma labor laws to see if an elected official is being paid for salary or if they're being paid like a normal employee. I'm sure there's difference between an elected position and an employee. And I think if you were to ask all the business chairmen or business committee members, they would take a salary cut of half of their salary, how many people would want to run? Are they running for the money? Because that's the first question I ask them. Are you running for the money?
To me, that's where you have to find people that have already been through life a few times in the way of life beats you down and you have to get back up. And selfless people, that's something that they do. And they, no matter whether they're getting paid or not, their heart is in it. And so no matter if their heart's in it, they're going to be in it. They're going to be there. They're going to show up. They're going to participate regardless. And like Miss Vicky said, if you're in it for the money, 90% of the time you're not going to show up, except unless you're getting paid to do it. That's kind of a sickening feeling when we've seen a lot of our elected business committee members be that way. They only show up when they're getting paid. And that's sickening, because I've literally been showing up for 11, 12 years straight now, looking at everybody, and I see through business committee meetings, through general council, through funerals, through celebrations, all of these things. I know who shows up. And I'm not looking at them as saying, oh, you're supposed to show up because you're getting paid to. You're supposed to show up because these are your people. That's who you are. Like Miss Grace, what we talked about Saturday. We show up to these funerals as representatives for all our people. You know, we show up. We're not, oh, well, so-and-so passed. Oh, let me get there. Why? It's not about me. That person is gone, but their family remains. They're mourning. That's the time we're supposed to be there for one another. That's the time we're supposed to shower one another with our love and attention and remind them that they're not in it alone. And instead, we have people who are like, well, I can't go because, I'm not getting paid. So what is that? That's not a leader. And that's sad that it's sad that we have to, in a way, say we're mandating you to be present. But at the same time, it's kind of like you want that position, but you only show up if you have it. You don't even show up when you're needed because you don't know. You're not getting paid for it, so you don't even know you're needed there. It's one of those things, and it bothers me. It's bothered me for years. And I've followed the crowd at one point. There was a time where I supported a lot of things that were going on without realizing the detriment it was doing to not just certain families. It's doing it to all of our families. And we're supposed to be one people, one family, one tribe, one nation. We're supposed to be one. Why are we still acting like, well, so-and-so's better because they went to school and they got this degree. Well, so-and-so's been over here doing this for 25 years. That's all they know how to do. Who's the more reliable one? Who's the more responsible one? Who's the one you really want to vote for to actually put that job, your life, your children's life above their own? Who's willing to actually do that? And as of right now, the elected members sitting there, I can't honestly say that they would lay down their life for any one of us. Can't say that. Just because I've watched them for so many years. I've watched, I've observed, I've learned, I've listened, and I've comprehended to the things that they say and their actions do. And it's scary for all of our people. It's scary for our children, for their children. It's scary for our elders. So if they weren't born or raised with accountability, it's almost like you have to go back and retrain them and teach them how to be accountable adults. But that's something we all have to do as one people.
Thank you. Something you said struck me, and it kind of speaks to the core of this hypocrisy that I have. And I'm with you. I agree 100% that we want leaders who are going to lead from the heart, be here because they want to be here because they give a damn, right? But how do we foster that as a people, right? How do we foster that through mandate, right? It's kind of like that oxymoron. It's tough. This isn't just the, show up full time, show us your schedule. Now, while that may be a part of the solution, how does that foster, or how do we as a people take that and help to foster that heart, foster that caring, not only for the people who we're electing, but so that others could, come along and see and be excited about participating. Because I mean, I know that nearly everybody who has put their name in the hat has worried about repercussion from running itself, right? Not even being elected, but just running. And and that's the sort of things that shouldn't be on our mind, right? We should be running for a position, not running against somebody in a position, right? That's the shift. We're still doing the same thing. But how do we do the same thing with mandating and fostering care at the same time? That's where, and so that's just where I say it's like, damn, this is tough, right? These aren't easy decisions, but they are solutions to what we see right now with who we elect right now, right? So the long term, we want to foster that. In this near future, we want to be able to set the tone, right? Set the tone and say, this is what we expect of
I
you.
think part of that, how you attain that is, I'm a trainer half the time. And I think there's trainings out there that can give people the skills that they may not have. I think that we need leadership training, not just for our VC, but for our directors, for our supervisors, because I think that's an area that we're lacking. I think maybe some training to help kind of fill those voids that, maybe some people didn't get.
So to that kind of, we haven't talked specifically about how to implement that training, but a part of that kind of speaks to a discussion that's been ongoing for us about another set of qualifications for office, right? A civil exam, to be able to run. We've heard numerous times up here our governing resolution misquoted, treaty years misquoted, history misquoted, misrepresented, right? And if we had some sort of civil exam, would that help, right? Like, would that help to I get not weed out, but create a different interest or a different spirit in how we choose to run for office and who decides to put their name in the hat for election?
So like a civics test, so basically a Quapaw are you test? Because that's not fair.
Basic. To be a citizen of the US or Oklahoma, you just got to be born, right? But to get an ID, you have to be established in some way. How do we establish ourselves as citizens of the Quapaw Nation, right? And without it being a government issued your Quapaw, right? And how do we encourage those who are running for these positions to be versed in, at a minimum, in our history, right? Or even some language. We ask college and high school students to have more information and know more. We require more from them than our business committee members. They only need $50. Our
Right, they have to. write that
educated
thing
youth,
down.
yeah. And it can't be the same thing semester after semester, right? We do that for them. Why don't we do that for somebody who's actually representing us and speaking to the public about who we are, right? That's fair.
Like, we talk about who we're descended from. That's all fine and good. But can you honestly sit there and tell me you would react to a situation the same way your ancestors did? Because you didn't know your ancestors. So what good does it do to say, well, I'm descended from so?
If I may, it's a matter of values. What has been passed down to us. And we did that with our young people recently. The elders met with the young people to share our lives, but we also were trying to teach them about Quapaw ways to live a good life, to tell them that we cared about them, but also they should care and share and give. And I mentioned that we are hoping that come powwow time, some of our kids will be out there and they'll say, "Hooray," or they'll say, "Gonna gay," or they'll shake your hand. These are things we used to do, but we've gotten away from it now. We need to get that back. But the values are there, and we do have to think of the future. What's going to happen to those kids? And let me just also throw in to you folks online, we had pizza and cake, so you missed out on that. But then also we had a dog coming in the open door, so that was a little bit of an interruption, so forgive us.
He's a red dog.
Fun.
And now he's guarding us.
Yeah.
Well, I am not a member of this committee. I'm just an observer. I don't need it. And I had a talk with Wheaton for the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I said, what you need is a committee that comes up with qualifications to be run for the business committee. I have talked to other members at different times. And they have requirements. We don't. All you do is sit down $50, have an application whether you're qualified or not. And like they said, I know one thing that she's running just for the money, but she has 9 years left because she can retire from teaching. We don't have any requirements. We can live in 10-2, which I think you should have lived closer to the office, because sometimes emergencies come up and you can't get hold of people. There's a way. And some of these people, they never come to the meetings. They don't know what's going on. You just cannot walk in off the street and think you can help run a tribe. You have to come to the meetings, participate, and know what is going on. How I feel that.
Absolutely.
But you can tell who comes to the meetings and knows what's going on just by the ones who come to business committee. Some of them are just like blank. They don't know what's going on. And I agree with my brother. He has went around to different tribes. And he said, maybe perhaps we should do like the city of Chattanooga did. They charge $750 to run. Some of them run charge $1,000. If you really want to run and you want to represent the tribe and do your best for them, you are willing to come up with that money. And I don't think that a big salary makes you a better member on the committee. Because I know Lloyd has worked with this tribe for years on nothing. He and Barbara started out, Lloyd was the first tribal administrator. And I believe it was 635 Main Street in Quapaw. They had a total of $25,000 to run the tribe, pay the employees and pay all their bills, and they made it. It was hard, but they made it. It's just all up here whether you, money doesn't make you do a better job. It's not in here, it's in here, and that really was hard. Okay, here's your mic. Thank you.
Thank you.
There was a time, and when this was years ago, I was asked by elders to run for office at that time. And they said at that time, they were wanting to get a slate of people together, people who could work together, be compatible to be on business committee. And they had asked me if I would run for chair. Well, I talked it over with family. And at that time, of course, family said, yes, you do this. But we served. It was part of the family too, but we served. We were asked to serve and we did it willingly. We didn't ask for anything. And I said, you're thanked in different ways. But Mazeska, no, we didn't. What we did though, later on was for people who were traveling, we thought, okay, can we reimburse them mileage? I mean, they're traveling to get here for meetings and things. Can we help them out? So there were different things that we could do, but there was no payment and we did it. And that's partly because of our families. We did it honorably.
Derek Jennings is he's one of our members and he's on right now. He shares quite a bit about things that we could do to make our governance ours, right? And not this boilerplate approach to sovereignty, right? Is it really sovereignty if we're doing it like everybody else, right? And this is one of those things that can be ours, you know, Quapaw, that we have a council, an elders council that, you know, is they select, you know, people who they think would be candidates, good candidates. And then the rest of us vote on those candidates, right? Why not? Why wouldn't that work? It engages our elders who have the best pulse on who we are and who have been sitting back and watching everyone. You know, why couldn't we do something like that? So that, you know, people aren't just, oh, I want to do it, right? There's got to be some sort of ceremony involved that whenever I go ask an elder for anything, I'm bringing something, right? So out of the gate, I'm approaching this position with ceremony. And the door's wide open for us to be able to do these types of things and make this ours, right? And we have talked about also a higher registration fee to be able to do that. $50 was 20 years ago, you know, it's a lot different now.
And I'm also wondering if for purposes of what we're trying to accomplish is the fact that sometimes surveys don't really work well with your people, particularly if you send them out in the mail, you know, answer the questions type of thing. They may not respond. You may have to go out to the people. Because I was contacted recently by Gallup poll, and I ignored that call for a long time. And then I thought, well, maybe I better answer the questions. And I did. But knowing a lot of people just are not comfortable with responding to written surveys. So again, we may have to devise some way that we can either go to our senior meals, or we can go to different places and say, you know, we'd like to have your thoughts on things. So to get that kind of participation too.
Ideally, that's what our business committee should be doing, right? They should be having dinner with our elders. They should be sitting down there Title VI. Our chairman should be going and having coffee with our elders and knowing how people are doing out there, and not, you know, trying to punch numbers, push decisions through a casino, right? These are our dignitaries for us, not for, you know, a business. We need them to run a business though.
Maybe we could utilize our IT people to devise something that'll be friendly for our people. You know, you don't like to punch all these buttons, but if you make it simple enough, you know, they can respond. So that might, now that we're into a different era now on communication, maybe we could try something like that.
Oh, Derek was asking about the sound. Okay. It's never too late to come back to any part of conversation. All right, but we're going to move forward a little bit and talk a little bit about term limits and term length. Okay. And now this was submitted to the people before, and to get that feedback from everybody. But I believe that I did a big disservice in that question or in that poll, because we didn't give everybody proper information about current processes for business committee members and things that are involved in learning these roles. But the question was, we posed, should we increase the term length to 3, 4 years? And should we have term limits, and what should those be? One, it's hard to get any real information when you're asking both of those questions simultaneously. The other thing is that it's hard for people to give feedback on something that we're not giving them proper information to give feedback on. Since this undertaking, what we have found is, or what continues to come to light, is that 2 years is not enough for anybody to serve wholly and be new or fairly new to these positions, right? Because there's a constant learning and you got to jump in with both feet, and you've got to learn, trying to learn gaming, trying to learn administration, trying to learn Robert's Rules of Order, which, we see people who've been up here and they still don't know. Right. So it's a constant, and the positions are going to continue to be a learning process. However, can we alleviate some of that by extending term lengths in any way? Are we at a good length currently? And then the question of term limits. Should there be a certain amount of years, a certain process that should be involved in somebody being elected, reelected? Should they take a time off before they're elected again, or can they immediately be elected into another position? So these are the questions that we want to kind of start to explore also, in the satisfaction with our current setup, as well as keeping in mind that as we move into a constitution and reorganize ourselves, should we take advantage of this opportunity to reorganize and take another approach to how our business committee manages our nation for us? Vicky asked what the main goal of all of this is. The initial survey we sent out was, what are the things that are most pressing to you as a tribal member about the state of affairs with our nation? And overwhelmingly, checks and balances was on that list. The timing of the survey probably kind of swayed the results of what we got also, because this is we just came through a new election. A 20-year incumbent had just exited the position, and new administration's coming in. So that could have played into some of the results. Asking this question again, we've had somewhat of a balance, even through all of the turmoil currently. We've had somewhat of a pendulum swinging the other way now. So I think getting this question out there again will help us to see a little clearer on, is this still how we feel? Do we think that people should be limited on how long that they could be in an elected office? On the other hand, we've come from a long history of leaders being in those positions until they passed on, and then passed those rights on to their children, right? So we're in a position now to re-examine how we're set up, that we don't have to stick with this 2-year election or 2-year term, or we could. Okay. Vicky asks, why is it called a business committee and not a tribal council? Whenever the business committee was created, it was not meant to be the government of our nation. Our Indian council is our government. We govern. The business committee was meant to take direction from the Indian council. Over the years, and as self-determination grows, our sovereignty expands, we get into other areas and engage in legal agreements across, we found ourselves in a position to where the government and business side blur lines, right? That even today, if you ask me, what's the difference between a government body and a business body, I wouldn't be able to tell you the way that we're set up. Because there's no clear distinction on how we would like to be governed. But in our governing resolution, it's clear in that first chapter, the preface to our governing document is that the business committee is not meant to be a governing body. But that's what it became.
Well, I think that the 2 years isn't long enough, but I also feel like we should have terms, like if you run what, so if we extend it to 3 years, then 3 terms would be 9 years or 2 terms would be 6 years. I don't think that, and again, it's just my opinion, but I don't feel that someone needs to be in there 10 years, 15 years. But I do feel that 2 years is not long enough. Because I feel like for those that are just elected, like you said, they're learning, they're thrown in, and then just when they're getting the swing of things, it's time for a new election and we potentially start all over again. So I do think the terms need to be extended, but I also feel like we need to set a limitation on how many terms somebody can serve.
How much, if they haven't learned in 2 years, at least not to be able to read a legal document, should they really be sitting on our business committee? If in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, they've been sitting there and they still can't read it by themselves, or it has to be explained to them, that's not a very good leader to me. That doesn't seem like you are participating enough to know what's going on. You're not learning enough to know what's going on, at least, and that's my opinion. It's also an observation.
People in the official position should be there to serve the people. And it may well be, did you mention ballot? I mean, after the term, they could be re-elected if they're doing a good job and you want to keep them. But there should be even also be a limit there too. You could only serve like for 2 terms, 3 terms.
Microphone, please.
For our business committee to say that they care about our people, why do we have any homeless tribal members? Period. Why do we have any tribal members struggling? And yes, I understand humans will be humans and they will do what they do. At the same time, if we're going to say that we are a nation of people who have always been a family, bad people in our family has existed since the beginning of time. They're still human. They didn't make the greatest choices. They didn't make the greatest, decisions, but they're still our people. And most of the time, the only way to teach people to change their ways is through loving them and supporting them. And I don't mean giving into their wants in that way. I mean, we take them back in, we get them back to where they're supposed to be. And I'm not speaking just on drug addicts or alcoholics or whoever. I'm talking about our families. We have so many broken families within our own people, which is weird considering we're so extended with one another and we are a tribal family. That's what we are. We're supposed to be able to take in one another's families. You don't have food. I have extra. Here, this. But somehow it's become a, well, I did this for you and now you owe me. And that's what I feel like our business committee has become. They've become, we got you this position, or we're giving you this position, or we're going to make a job for you, or we're going to do this for you. And that's across the board on the business committee. I feel that. I truly do, because I've been watching all of them. I don't care from John's reign to the current situation. This has been an ongoing thing of abuse of authority, abuse of power, because it's gone to their heads. And that's scary because we have so many people that want to take care of our people in the correct way that we're having to fight whole families because they're so stuck with the narrative that as long as they have a family member sitting there, their family's great. Well, that is amazing for your family. I'm not mad. I don't want nothing bad to happen to any one of my tribal members. None of them. At the same time, your family's not the only one that matters. All of our families matter, and all of our families should be taken care of equally. And to say equal, I mean, no one's life is more important than the next. In essence, none of us asked to be born into this world. None of us asked to be born Quapaw. We were blessed in that department. That's a big blessing to all of us. But there's so much selfishness. And it starts with yourself. It starts with the person who you are. If you're capable of being selfless, and that doesn't mean that you don't have boundaries. That doesn't mean that you don't deserve respect. What that means is you're not in competition with anyone. You're not there to say, look what I did. I'm here and I'm doing this, and this is how we do it. I'm here. You're here. You're here. We've got all these great ideas. And all these years combined in this room have some of the most amazing ideas for our people, to help our people. Every single one of them. And we're not fighting with one another. We're not belittling one another. That's a selfless act, because we're not here for ourselves. We're here because we know that our people are not being taken care of properly, and we want to correct that. So we are here trying to make the correct changes, and it's going to be hard, and but we're looking at the whole Indian way, non-Indian way. We're still trying to play that. If we start with our people first, then we can worry about the days we're not Quapaw. We can worry about those days later. But the days that we're here with one another, we're Quapaw, and we need to be present for every single one of us. Our participation, our involvement is at a very lacking place. And it's scary because I get to see our elder generations, my age and my mother's age, and then lower down the chain, I get to see all these different ages within our people. And I'm watching them and I'm seeing them struggling. I see their families struggling. And it's not my place to put their business out there. I'm not going to do that. That's not what I meant. What I mean is we're all going through something, but it starts at the heart of our people. The heart of this tribe is our people. We would not be Quapaw tribe. We would not be Quapaw Nation without the people. So if those people don't want to be a part of it, then why are they on the roll? Why are they in the tribe? Why with that? Like, why? Because you're hindering the rest of us from doing what's right. If you're not going to participate, you're not going to be there. It doesn't matter to you. Being Quapaw does not matter to you, then you shouldn't be on the roll like that. Literally, like, my bad, guys. But like, I'm serious because it's driving me crazy. We're so worried about the catch-22. This way we could do it, but we could do it this way. Well, what about this way? Even if we all came together at General Council and we sat down and we tried to explain things to one another, because of everything from the past generations to the present day, we have all been raised a different generational way. And some things are learned behavior from not being in a traditional home. Those ways can be taught, but you got to be a willing participant. And I don't see a lot of the people in our tribe willing participants.
Yes. Mhm. Are you asking, is there a solution to that, or is there an official? Currently, we don't find out until the action has been taken. Okay. What is being proposed as an amendment is that it would be up to the people to decide if resolutions be posted 10 days prior to their vote, and phone polls only be done in a emergency standard, and that they're posted, even if it's an emergency, they get posted immediately. They find out in some way, electronically or by voice, and they've got to send that out to be voted on. So they have it documented. So maybe that's a step in the right direction. I don't know if it's the final solution to that, but it would help us to know what's going on prior to showing up to the business committee and not even being given the resolution, right? We give the short title to it. Mm-hmm. So that would be helpful for us.
Putting it up, say 10 days before, how does that affect business? You know what I'm saying? So if you're gonna put, because sometimes you don't have 7 days or 10 days.
it was a time sensitive document, then these people are in the office. That should not be an issue to post that and be voted on it within the time frame required.
The direction should come from the people. Another concern of mine, though, is, and I don't know how we're going to be addressing it, but criminal activity that's going on within our Quapaw Nation. I've been getting calls. What's happening? What's going on? You know, and unfortunately, there's abuse. There's different things going on, but how do we, and some things have been mentioned too, business committee, hey, this is happening, you know, what can be done? We want something done. And there's no response, but there's criminal activity going on. So how do we stop that? Because that's harming all of us.
Tribal court, she said. I think it's not 911.
Gracie, we currently employ 30 marshals. Our reservation is less than 90 miles. There's no reason that they can't be taking care of that.
I think what Gracie is speaking to is the tolerance of behavior. Okay.
Our
And
reservation is 96 miles. My bad. I was off.
get it together. So it's the tolerance that we have as a collective and as individuals, and we waver, right? On one hand, we say that the business committee shouldn't have anything to do with employment, you know, or punitive or firing and hiring. You know, we change our minds so frequently on things like this. And then whenever somebody is doing something we don't agree with, get the business committee involved. We want them to handle this, right? So I'm not saying they shouldn't, but we waver and we say, no, don't do that. We swear by it, don't do that. And then we plead, please do something about this. As a collective, we want things to be, to your point, we want things to be guided by principle, right? That our leaders should be entrusted with a degree of decision-making that's guided by principle. But by your principles or their principle, right? Right. But when they exercise those principles and take care of somebody, help somebody with a car, help somebody with some money, we, the collective, throw a fit because we can't prove that they're not doing anything else. There's no documentation. Where's the conversation? And we want our leaders to be guided by strict, follow the law, letter to the T type of things, because we don't trust them collectively, right? I will trust two this week. I will trust a different one next week. We as a collective, we waver like that collectively. So an issue that we have is in this tolerance of illegal behavior that Grace is talking about is today we put up with it. Then we find ourselves in a situation where we set the tone and now we don't want to put up with it because we set that tone, right? And what we're doing for ourselves is, what we're doing for ourselves is we're creating that again, that catch-22. We're creating again that catch-22 where we want the principle to be the guiding aspect of how we conduct ourselves. We even put it in our tribal code that the court can rule, but the court must also consult or has the authority to consult tribal elders, right? And how does that play into a decision or a verdict or whatever, or an imposition? And then on the other hand, we watch and we say that what this one is doing is okay this time because it's not as bad as this one, right? Or this one, it's okay because they did that or they've been doing that. And we're not unified in how we think that they should be. And I kind of bring this back to a familial sense that in a couple of different ways. One, about those who aren't willing to be a part of the family. I have no business in deciding how my mom runs her house or my sister runs her house. I don't live there, right? Similarly, should people not willing to participate have that right to tell us how we should be running our house if they're not willing to participate? I don't know. Maybe not. Similarly, should we as the parents to the hierarchy, I think the parents to the business committee, the child of that hierarchy, it's like we are making rules for the business committee or for the child to follow that we can't practice ourselves, right? There's a degree of responsibility and respect that, and this comes back kind of full circle to what we're doing here, the roles and responsibilities for our general counsel, that we don't have that for ourselves, but we want our business committee who comes from ourselves to have that instead, right? And is there a need for us to impose that on ourselves? A resolution of respect for one another, which includes some of these things like the activity on Facebook. What am I allowed to, like, how far can I berate a business committee member or one of our own tribal members before it's too far, right? I mean, I mean that for effect, right? Because we do it. Yeah, we're very mean and hurtful to one another collectively, not us as individuals, but collectively. So, sorry, Grace.
One thing this discussion brought to my mind is about history of our people. How did they take care of things in the past? And you probably heard this story with some young people who were disorderly in the whole thing. What did they do? They dug a pit. They dug a pit for those people. That was their punishment. And when people came through our country here and they attacked a Quapaw girl, the men took care of that. There were ways then that they dealt with things. Not that we would not want to go to that extreme, but that's what they did in the past.
It's tempting sometimes, Gracie.
But again,
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
right. So there are no consequences,
There's
Right now.
limits. Absolutely.
but they took care of things in their way. And so, but that just made me recall that story of how they took care of some people.
Yeah, they did it. I remember the story. I wasn't there, but I remember. Clarify that. I promise Miss Gracie, I was not one of them kids. It was not me. I promise. Not involved.
So something that this brings up is something that we face and, our dilemma in going forward. So, and these are the conversations that the committee has, and this is a good example of why things take so long, because we hit these hard questions is like, well, we say this, but do we mean this? And we can point to things like the past special general counsel, and where a admission to wrongdoing is admitted, but also accepted as and there's so much to that goes with that, because to a large degree, that's the right way to do it. That's the Indian way to do it. The Quapaw way to do it is, yes, you were wrong. You came here, you admitted to what you did. And no, we don't need to string you up for that. But on the other hand, we create these guidelines and these rules and we want them to be followed to the T. But when they're not, right, we hang our other committee out to for doing what we asked them, right? The grievance committee faced a lot of pushback for doing what we asked them to do. Hold our business committee accountable to what we've decided that they should be accountable to, and they did, right? And that wasn't extended, that courtesy isn't extended across the board, right? So again, it brings it back to us. What is our responsibility as a nation, as a citizen, as a collective? What is our responsibility for each other? Do we need to have a conversation where we just get it out there and say, we want it to be followed to the T as much as possible, you know, and we're all clear that it's as much as possible. Then we can agree that we have a common ground, right? And this is where restructuring comes impossible.
That
Yeah.
there's higher laws.
Yeah.
And then it's just, why are we splitting hairs with the versus grievance committee and then business committee? So
Should there be a body that splits those hairs for
hopefully we'll have
us,
that commission
right?
established.
Should there be a body, an elders commission, that says like, hey, yes, we follow, the rest of us follow it to the T, but the elders commission or the elders council decides, is like, you know what, you're right. How do we do that though? Right?
Well, one thing that I do pass on to people, the way I was taught, is the fact that you don't harm anybody. If you harm somebody, it will come back to you. There are consequences, and that's not us. That's Intate. Intate knows everything. He loves us. He cares for us as people. So we have to answer. We will have to answer.
Now, if Gracie stood up and said that to general counsel, who's going to argue with that? Right? Nobody. You can't, right? You can't. So when you have that type of authority coming from somebody that we all trust, right? There's no reason that we can't have an elders council, and we can't make room for them, and we can't find a way to have that council represent everybody equally and fairly, and let them make some bigger decisions for us. And this is where tribal governance and business matters can start to separate, right? And business matters, they don't need to go to the elders council to build 5 houses, right? But the elders council can be consulted in other ways on matters like following, our governing resolution or our bylaws or whatever it may be. And this is what we want to highlight for everybody, is that we don't want to just take what we got and throw some rules at it. We want to take what we've got and grow and form what's going to help us to continue to grow. Yeah. So I think that was a great, great. Yeah. Put some ceremony to it. Yeah. Derek's big thing. He always says, bring some ceremony.
So, but what does this elders count? Wow. So what does this elders council look like? And the only reason I say that is just because somebody is older doesn't make them an elder. Just because you reach a certain age, that doesn't immediately make you an elder.
I'm related.
You know what I mean?
Over there in
You, just
Uga'xpa.
because, there's like the Buffalo Girls. I'd go to the Buffalo Girls. I'd go to Gracie. But there's some people that just because they think that they've reached a certain age, that makes them a tribal elder. That's not how I was raised. And that's not how, so how would you even begin to define that, Roman?
That's a great question. I don't know. I don't know. What I do know though is there is a principle that the creator speaks through all of us collectively, right? And that if we could get all of our elders maybe defined by age, all of our elders in a room to have a conversation and let them decide, would we be willing to listen, right? And I think that there's a lot that could come from that. But they elect their own leaders if they choose to have one. But they govern themselves. I don't even want to say govern. They operate autonomously. But there are ways to incorporate that type of governance into what we currently do, which also would include maybe the elders council wants to have a seat sitting on the business committee, that elders council gets a vote no matter what, right? And Gracie, do you want to share about the sharing with youth?
Well, it's a sort of thing that this was mentioned a couple of months ago to business committee, was the fact that we felt that as elders, that perhaps there needs to be more guidance. There needs to be more direction, and that hasn't been happening. This is something that we can do. And so I had heard about other tribes where they do have an elder council, and it's quite a thing. And I didn't realize it was could be so involved. But even at the last business committee I did mention that. And so the business committee had said, we'll help you look into it. How can we create an elders council? And so we are looking into that, but we've been feeling there needs to be guidance. There needs to be some direction. And that's what we were about. And we were so pleased to meet with our young people type of thing. And as far as age wise, you can be called an elder at a young age. It's what you know.
Right. Absolutely.
So, it's not, as you say, it's not chronological age that necessarily makes you an elder. It depends on you, who you are, and you can be called an elder. But then we all call aunties, uncles, It's in the works.
And some of that too involves guidance for our elders, right? That as a collective, we're a broken home because we left and we went our separate ways, and some, took care of our home, our lands for us, and then we returned separated from being Quapaw and having our feet in the dirt. And I'm guilty of that. And how do I get back? How do I get back and get invited back in? And having that council to guide other elders, creator will make those changes, right? Vicky asked if it's, if we're able to make it mandatory for one business committee member, at least one business committee member to show up for these meetings. And we reiterate, we remind the business committee that they have a standing invitation to all of our business committee or all of our constitution committee meetings. They are, and there has been a good, for lack of better terms, a Chinese wall between our conversations, things we're putting forward, and their participation. They have joined to listen and to provide feedback from time to time, but they don't guide our conversation or engage in a way to alter what we're discussing. They join us on matters of logistics, and but they're always welcome. I think it was voiced by, or not, I don't think it was voiced by one of the business committee members that as we're in this phase that we're in right now, the proper thing may be that they're not really sitting here the whole time where we're discussing these items, because we're talking about business committee roles. That could be tossed, one way or the other. But in all regards, we've kept a pretty decent separation from business committee influence into the product.
But wouldn't it be easier when we're talking about roles to talk to somebody in that position to see kind of what their day-to-day is? Kind of, wouldn't that give us a better idea of?
We asked the business committee before to do a survey, and this was after we did the previous survey. And we've gotten feedback on a lot of the questions that we're discussing here, on some of the things that they'd like to see, how they see us, where they get their authority from, term limits, term lengths. And we could do that again, because this is completely, except for one. Yeah, it's a whole new body. And yeah, we could definitely do. A part of what we asked them to do, though, was to provide us with a monthly journal for 1 month, tell us everything they did on a day-to-day basis. And 5 of the 7 did. And we had some very helpful feedback of seeing a lot of what was involved. And a lot of, it's like, okay, but they did it. And we agreed that we wouldn't put that out there, because there are some very distinguishable people, or through their activities, distinguish them on whose schedule is what. But we could do that again. No reason we can't do that again.
If we're going to try to define what they do, it would be extremely beneficial to have their input, because that's not something that, other than the expectation of, we expect you to be there, we expect you to be available, we expect you to conduct business, but what does that look like for you? Because it may not be the same as what I think it is.
If I could mention too, the past, present administration is the fact that they were restructuring, but unfortunately, it appears that the chairman was not really dealing with the rest of the business committee. And I tried to share my experience of working in a congressional office in Washington, D.C. Your congressman or congressperson has a staff. And within that staff, there are people who are working on particular issues. The congressperson can't know everything, but if you know the person who's dealing with this particular issue, then you can go to them. And why can't our business committee be like that too? If there's an interest in a particular committee, go observe. Don't take it over, but go and observe and find out what's going on and report back. Like Monday group when they get together after the game, what worked, what didn't, type of thing. But we as a committee have told them when the meeting is, and we hope someone will come. But it's not set up that way. It used to, I think it used to be, or at least we did, was the idea that we had different ones working with different groups. And then report back so we would know what all was going on and working together then. Well, even when you're trying to schedule things, this group wants to do something this time, or this group wants to do the same time. Why can't we coordinate among ourselves? So that's a suggestion for the BC.
Thank you, Gracie. So we have about 15 minutes out of respect for everybody's time. We've decided that we have a hard stop at 8:30. And so with this last 15 minutes, what I'd like to do is just give everybody an opportunity one more time to share on anything that they're feeling about either the talk points or what we've discussed already. And so that we could hear from everybody. Let's go ahead and go around and start with Vicky.
Okay, I would like to know do you intend to, when does this committee disband? Are you gonna go on for a couple more years, 3 more years, 4 more years, what?
We don't know. What we have identified is that even with production of and acceptance of a constitution, there is still implementation that needs to take place, right? And how do we set ourselves up for that also? And because it's one thing to say, it's like, okay, here's all these amendments, we're done, bye, right? But if we as a collective want a good transition into what we're after, we have to stay involved, right? Now, the structure, the makeup of that's up to General Council, okay, or Indian Council, how that looks. The plan is for the Constitution, though, to be written and able to be voted on by 2025, July of 2025. We believe that we have a good trajectory for that. We have ourselves set up for a lot of community interaction through learning about Robert's Rules of Order, constitutional seminars, and we have funding available. That was the biggest thing. We have funding available for special meetings of the Indian Council as well as elections. We have a full-time position that we're seeking right now that is really going to expedite a lot of the stuff that we're doing. So that's the goal of it. So the amendments that we're making are not all for naught. It's easier right now to make amendments to the governing resolution because we hold the authority to that. We don't have to get approval for that. What we need approval for from the Secretary of Interior is to restructure ourselves. And once we go from a governing resolution to a constitution, that's considered reorganization. And that requires a secretarial vote, and that process could get hung up a lot. So the more that we are in agreement on up front, the easier that is going to be to write the Constitution, the easier it will be to approve the Constitution because we've already all agreed on what it says. We have quite a few. We can I've been meaning to do it. We could publish a list of a lot of our resources. You know, one of those is the Native Nations Institute has a catalog and links also to the Tribal Clearinghouse, which has tons of constitutions on it. A lot of the trouble that we have is finding a constitution that isn't the boilerplated IRA constitution, right? Finding something that speaks more to who we are. But yes, we have sought those out. We sought out professional help in a lot of regards. We do have legal counsel to help with what we're doing.
Going
Mm. We have our own legal counsel that was already approved by the business committee. This is not 100% a legal position that we're looking for. Knowledge in the legal realm is ideal, but it's not 100% what we're looking for. So a glorified paralegal, I guess, not even a paralegal, a glorified administrative assistant. Mm. Somebody knowledgeable with what we're doing. Felix S. Cohen wrote the handbook on federal policies, and it's outdated. It's not. There's nothing in there that's really current in the federal handbook. I think past the 70s.
He also wrote a book on writing tribal constitutions.
Is it the one with his picture on the back? I have not seen that one. No, I know of the book. I have not read that book. No. We do have other resources that we could share with everybody. There's a multitude. Find Deloria Jr. has an outstanding Native justice book, and talks about who we are and how we got into the position of what we're doing with our governance, right? And it's just principle ideas, but yeah. Okay. Abigail, do you have any?
I've said enough. Have a great night. Be safe. Love y'all.
Everybody's passing. All right, Gracie.
Yeah, I think we said no.
So I'll just say, hey, pizza people. So take pizza home.
She told us 4 or 5 times before we finally got it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She was not playing with it.
Okay, so this is a dual subject, and if we don't finish this topic, that's all right. It's just to start the conversation. The idea of the secretary treasurer being split into 2 positions and eliminating one. However you would decide to think about this, the need for an executive secretary who is tasked. Yes. Who is tasked with doing a lot of the things that the secretary is outlined in our governing resolution to do.
Am I wrong? Was I wrong for thinking that? But isn't that what the secretary treasurer was supposed to do? Maybe I don't know. I mean, I know they run.
The treasury.
We could take the secretary treasurer out of the business committee and put in the elder council seat right there. Since we've got the executive secretary and we've got a CFO, so makes sense, huh? That kind of makes sense. I think I could roll with that. Especially for our elders.
Section 9, the secretary treasurer shall correctly record all proceedings of all meetings and shall forward copies of the minutes of meetings to the area director and to the commissioner of Indian Affairs. He shall be responsible for the prompt and efficient handling of all correspondence pertaining to the business of the council. He shall make out the order of business for the chairman, shall notify all committee of their appointment, shall have custody of the records and all papers of the council, which records and papers shall be open to inspection at any time in his presence by any member of the council desiring to review them. He shall keep a correct list of all members of the council, shall authenticate all accounts or orders of the council, and in the absence of the chairman and the vice chairman, shall call the meetings to order until a chairman pro tem is selected. He shall render a written report at the annual meeting, and at the expiration of his term of office, records and records and all papers in his possession shall be turned over to his successor. He shall issue notices of all meetings and conduct all general correspondence as directed by the general counsel of the Tribal Business Committee. He shall keep an accurate account of receipts and disbursements of all monies belonging to the tribe which may come into his hands, and make appropriate reports to the Quapaw Tribal Business Committee and the Quapaw Indian Council at its annual meetings. The accounts and records of the Quapaw Tribal Business Committee and the General Council shall be open at all times for inspection and audit by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs or his authorized representative.
If I may give you a little history on this as well, we used to have separate positions, secretary and treasurer. And so they had difficulty filling two positions. So they said, why don't we combine them? So we'll have a secretary treasurer. And so that as we got more involved with gaming and the whole thing, finances were increasing. The secretary treasurer at that time said, I need an assistant. So a position was created. And so someone came in to do that. And so then they have their way of creating their own positions, new positions. So this person was moved up then. And now I guess we do have a executive secretary, which is, they're not business committee. No, but they are assisting type of thing. But again, a position was created back then because the secretary treasurer said it was just getting to be too much, needed an assistant. So a position was created and filled. And so that's how that came about.
So it brings up the question is that still how we want to operate? Right. I think that to the naked eye, many of us would agree that the secretary treasurer is the busiest person on this committee. Right. Doesn't need to be that way. Do we want it to be that way? Right. Do we want to share the workload? How do we do that? What does that look like? And if it's going to remain the same, should that be reflected financially? I think there's a lot of questions that should be looked at, or at least entertained.
We may need two separate positions again. Secretary to take care of the minutes and notices and all of that thing, because the treasurer, really that job has expanded. So there's more involved now as we have grown.
Another position that we speak about from time to time is the sergeant of arms, right? That conventionally, or in, I guess, the not even the American system, the colonized system, a sergeant of arms is the enforcer of rule, right? Could be the parliamentarian, but they're the one who holds the committee accountable to process. And as we can see, we need that. We we waver on following process so frequently. This last meeting, I mean, but we don't have that, and we could use that. But then again, it comes with somebody that's got to be educated in that field or that regard, right? But it could be also be somebody that the committee selects themselves, through the able body and say, you are the person that's going to enforce the rules or make sure that we follow the rules, that we follow process. Because we need it. I think until the body is responsible or knowledgeable enough to be that enforcer, that we're going to continue to question ourselves on, is that right? And we look at each other in the middle of something that we hear is like, I don't know, and then we start looking up, but having somebody who has that or can find out questions faster than we can, something to think about also. So with that being said, thank you, everybody who has been with us online throughout this. Thank you, everybody who showed up. The Constitution Committee is going to take this discussion that we've had and use what we can to formulate some questions to garner more information from our body. So we'll do our best with a lot of this discussion that we have. If anything comes to you in the interim, feel free to reach out to any of us. We're always open for a conversation. We always bring our conversations back to the committee. And if you want to send an email to the committee, the email is constitution.committee@quapawnation.com. And it gets sent to all of us right away. Gracie, will you close us out with a prayer?
And Tate Ganage, we are so thankful to you. You have given us earth, sky, and water. We thank you for your creation. We thank you as we conduct our business for the O-gah-pah people. We ask that you, or thank you for being with us and for helping us through the process. So we thank everyone who's here. We ask that you be with each of us as we go to our destination, whether it be home or wherever. But we just, again, are so thankful to you for what you have given us, what you've done for us. And now we in return want to serve you even better. Ganage. Amen.
I think he did that.
Oh, yeah.